So today we're going to be looking at a program called Read and Write for Google. My name is Paul Brown. I work for a company called TextHelp, and we are the company that designs and markets Read and Write for Google. We're located in Northern Ireland in Antrim, and then regionally based throughout North America as well. Before I show the program, what I like to normally do is give an example of a student who typically benefits from this type of program, specifically with Read and Write. So here was a student who was asked to complete these questions in complete sentences. And you'll notice here on the first page, the student was able to do it with the first question, but IDK, I don't know, comes in, and then you have just single and two-word answers. And then the second half of this, you can see the student really didn't get any better, and you can see the handwriting getting larger as he gets more frustrated, and so on. So you can kind of see a student who is struggling here with language. Look about 3 months later, the same directive to the same student, and you can see the student's work here. It looks like a completely different student. And so this is the difference that Read and Write Gold can make when you bring in tools such as text-to-speech, word prediction, different types of dictionaries, editing tools, and so on. Some of the research that goes behind what Read and Write Gold does, predominantly, first of all, looking at text-to-speech with the dual highlighting that you'll see, can increase student comprehension by up to 5 grade levels. So it's not just a productivity tool to replace a human who might be reading to a student, but also because of the nature of the visual and audio feedback at the same time, that is what bumps up the student comprehension by up to 5 grade levels. Also, a lot of the tools that are in Read and Write for Google, which are also located on Read and Write Gold, have been shown in studies to increase students' writing capabilities incredibly. And there's a lot of evidence that goes towards this, and we'll see some of those writing tools today as well. So Read and Write for Google is comprised of 3 different pieces. All of these can work on a Chromebook, on a PC, or on a Mac computer. The first piece you'll see is in Google Docs. The second is going to be when students are on web pages. And third is going to be through Drive, is going to be the ability for us to make accessible PDF documents as well as any EPUBs or existing Kurzweil files, KES files. So the first to show you the types of tools that are on there, text-to-speech, word prediction, dictation, a lot of these types of tools that have been on different pieces of different programs throughout many years on desktops, including Read and Write Gold, or possibly programs like Kurzweil or Dragon or other programs like that. The elements that have benefited many types of students are brought here together into Read and Write for Google. So first we'll look at the Google Docs toolbar that's going to look like something like this.
I'll end up dollars and cents in the end.
Secondly, you're going to see web pages. There will be support there on the web pages. And then third, the PDF reader, EPUBs, and also KES reader are located again through Google Drive, and we'll take a look at that. So I'll jump now into the actual program itself. And when you have a Google document up, such as this one here, when you have Read and Write for Google installed, you'll see a little green tab at the top of the Google Doc. And when you click on that, it's going to drop down a toolbar that has a number of tools on it. And these tools are going to help students with either accessing text or possibly writing. And for some students, they are great productivity tools. So the first thing that most students will use this for is to hear whatever is in the Google Doc read back. And as I mentioned earlier, it will also have that dual highlighting. So I've got my cursor here at the beginning of History of Ireland. You'll see when I click on this play button, it's going to read that back to me.
History of Ireland. The Irish are mainly of Celtic origin.
I left my folder. I looked at it and I left it.
They invaded Ireland along with Great Britain and other areas of Europe. In 432 AD, St.
So I'm going to pause it there, but also you'll see this wheel up here where there's settings. You can change the voices. So there are a number of different voices you can choose from. You can alter the speed. You can also decide if you want it to continuously read. And then you can translate and have it speak back from English to either Spanish or French. So a lot of flexibility with the voice choices here for the text-to-speech. You'll also see a couple tools here that are dictionary tools. One is a talking dictionary, the other is a picture dictionary. So if I come across a word that I'm not familiar with, I can highlight it, I can click on the dictionary, and then have that read aloud.
The beginning or start of something.
Also, if I have that word highlighted, I can also go ahead and click on the picture dictionary, and that's going to give me a visual for what that word is. And as I click through on other words, it's going to give me a visual for that as well. So this is great not only for struggling readers, but also readers who might be ELL learners who are trying to learn the English language and learn what these words are and would benefit from a visual image of this. Another tool that's quite popular in the writing area is word prediction. And what word prediction does is it determines what the next most likely word is as a student is typing in words into a Google document, and the student can then choose it, similar to when you're using either a Google search or on your cell phone or mobile phone. When you are starting to type in a text, it'll start to complete those words like a word completion. So here, if I'm going to type in the word today, notice here I've got two letters in.
To Tom, today.
And I can click on that word to pop it in.
Want, wanted, will.
So a very helpful tool in the writing process for either reluctant or struggling writers, or for some students that just want to more quickly add the words in without having to type them all, and also some students that might either be phonetic spellers or struggle with the spelling process of writing. Another popular tool is the speech-to-text or dictation tool located right here. And when I click on this, I'm going to speak in a sentence, and you're going to see it transcribe that automatically for me. Today, I walked to school. So you can see there I have another way that I can input text into the Google Doc where maybe I might be a student who struggles with the writing process, spelling, possibly physically. It's not easy for me to type onto a keyboard, so I have that option. And this type of dictation or speech-to-text software is becoming more widely adopted by general populations who might use their cell phones to speak in their text or to speak in their email, and it transcribes it automatically for them. So this has been a very popular tool for general populations. The other tools you see here help you out if you are looking at a word that you're not familiar with. You can choose to click on the fact finder, where it's going to automatically go and do a Google search on the word that you have highlighted for you. Or if you come across a word that you're not sure of and you want to know what that is in your language, which in this case might be French, I can click on the translator tool.
Converti.
And it'll speak that out loud to me in a French accent. And lastly here you will see that there are some highlighters here. What the highlighters allow you to do, there's two things that they allow you to do. One is, let's say I'm doing some research here in this Google document and I wanted to highlight some words here. For instance, right now, maybe everything that has to do with the history of Ireland and religion is going to be yellow. And then maybe down here when it comes to some things about some more cultural things, I'm going to highlight those blue. And down here we'll see that there's some more things that I'm going to highlight blue, and then down at the bottom here maybe I'll turn these yellow. And when I'm done with the highlighting aspect here, when I click on this Collect Highlights button, it's going to grab all four colors and create for me a new Google document that's going to have just those highlighted pieces, and it's going to organize them by color. So all of my yellows now have come together, all of my blues have come together, and it gives me here an audit trail of information in case I have to build a bibliography. I've got that information here. And this is automatically saved, this Google Doc, into my Google Drive. So a very helpful tool for students that struggle with organization or someone that wants to speed up the research process. And then lastly here, if I get rid of these highlights, and I'm going to do individual words now that maybe I'm not all that comfortable with. And I'm just going to highlight these any color. And then after I do this, I'm going to click on the vocabulary button. This time what it's going to do is it's going to open up a Google document, but it's going to define these words as well as give me a visual for them and a place where I can enter in my own interpretation of that. So here then basically now I can add in what this means to me. And of course all this I can have read aloud back to me.
Christianity.
So that is a look at the tools on Read and Write for Google that are inside of Google Docs. And at this point, I'll just stop. Scott, any questions at this point?
No, I don't think so. I've noticed that the program has grown considerably than when I first came across Read and Write Gold back in 2006, 2007. So that's very encouraging. I like that it collects all of the highlights into one spot, into a new document. I really like the picture dictionary.
Yeah, for students that are using Google Docs exclusively, then if they're used to using Drive, then it creating this and already placing it inside of Google Drive is very nice. So here basically it's just going to automatically save that file there. So if I want to share it out, I can do that. So I think a lot of it, the point is to add accessibility and tools to what students are already using. So it sounds like your students have been using Google more and more as time goes on. Is that right?
Yes, that's for sure.
Good.
We're also experimenting with vocabulary.com, and they have word lists as well. And I think these word lists that you identified in the Ireland piece as words that you may not be familiar with, you could just simply copy and paste those right into vocabulary.com, and then it would test you on those words to reinforce that vocabulary.
Oh, that could be a good way to do it.
Interesting, yeah.
Yeah. So we've looked at some popular vocabulary theorists in terms of the best ways for students to build vocabulary, and creating a block sheet like this with different columns for this information seems to be a very particularly attractive one to a lot of these theorists. For instance, like Robert Marzano, this is exactly what he says you have to have included for students to build their vocabulary. So it may go very well with programs like vocabulary.com.
In the old days, they used to build word walls with images just like these, and what you've done here is created a virtual wall, and that's perfect.
Yeah, I think they still do that. I know in my son's classroom he does. So this, you're right. This just kind of adds the same element here in a Google Doc.
Yeah, yeah, that's and it's individually tailored, so that's even better.
Yeah, exactly. So what I'll do now is I'll move over to the web pages here. So in the web pages, to get support here, you have a little icon that is our icon in the address bar here. So when a person clicks on that, what you get is basically a floating toolbar with a lot of these tools on it, similar tools to the ones we saw in the Google Doc, but just to give you a show, there's a few differences. One is I've got hover speech here, so if I have text I want to listen to, I can highlight it and click the play button just like I could in the Microsoft Word or the Google Doc.
Patterns in Arctic weather and climate.
And let me go and just change this voice here. Oh, there we go. And if I come across something, though, that is a hyperlink, like these words over here on the left that are blue, and if I try and highlight them and then click play, I may accidentally hit the link and go to a new place. This hover speech, what this allows me to do is just hover over text, and it's going to read it automatically for me.
All about Arctic climatology and meteorology. Introduction. What is the Arctic? Arctic phenomena. Arctic weather and climate.
So I'll stop that there, but that is the difference between the Google Doc and a web page here. I can just hover over and have things read aloud. Same types of tools here as well. So if I have words that I'm not familiar with, I can use either the dictionary tool or I can use the picture dictionary tool, which will give me an image of that. And then also if I don't know a word and I want to do a web search, I can use either that fact finder or I can have it translate and read aloud in my language, either Spanish or French. And then the same types of tools are very applicable, especially on web pages where students do a lot of research. Again, if I was going to be doing a research program or research topic here, let's say for weather, anything that has to do with weather I'm going to highlight in blue. Anything that has to do maybe with cyclones is going to be, for me, it's going to be pink. Maybe here's another blue. And then as I go down here, maybe polar lows or things that have to do with temperatures are going to be green. And so the more discombobulated some of these colors get, that's the beauty of this program here. When I click on the Collect Highlights button, it's going to grab all these colors again, this time from a web page, and create a new Google document. And again, all those colors are going to come together. So all my blues are now together, all my yellows together. So this is all brought together in a nice format here, organized for the student. And again, it has, if I need any of the information about where I got this information, it's down here at the bottom. So a very similar feature again to what was in the Google Doc. And you also have the ability here, if there are words you don't know, you can highlight them and create that vocabulary list we were talking about as well. Then the other tool that's different here that is not on Google Docs, this is a newer tool for us, this is the Simplify button. So let's say I do come to a page like this where there are a lot of possibly distractions in that I've got a lot of different images here, and there is different, you can see over here there's different columns, that sort of thing. When I click on the Simplify button, what it's going to do is it's going to open up a new web page and just pull out the text. So I'm no longer distracted by a lot of those visuals. Now I'm just dealing with the text, and I can use, of course, the full suite of tools from Read and Write for Google here. So if I want to have it read aloud, I can do that. If I want to do the highlights and extraction, or if I want to get clarification on what a word is, I can use the visual or talking dictionaries here as well. And then if I'm a student who needs to have less text, I can choose the Simplify buttons here. And when I click on the minus button, you're going to see that some of the text is disappearing. So it's giving me less of the text to have to read through. So for some lower level students, or some students who might be accessing text that is above their reading level, they can pull away some of the text here. Scott, any questions before we move on to the last piece, which is in the Google Drive?
No, I really like the connectivity between Google Docs and, of course, the web page and what you're reading out loud, and then, of course, highlighting and pulling in those highlights with the source web page where you found it. That's excellent.
Yeah.
Which voice do you recommend? I know some people prefer male voices and some female voices. Are there voices that are better than others in that quite extensive list of voices?
You know, we haven't had any research come back from that because sometimes it's just a preference depending on what the student prefers. We also have, interestingly, when you come across maybe some text from, for instance, I know my school district I used to work at, they have some digitized copies of some Harry Potter text, and so they choose to use some of the UK voices just because it sounds more authentic, more fun for those students who are used to seeing the movies and hearing that type of voice. So it could be a preference thing in that regard as well, depending on the content. But I think one of the important things also is, in addition to the actual choice of the voice, is actually how fast you listen to it. One of the things that we have that we do understand from a lot of our users using Read and Write Gold over the many years is if a student has a visual impairment, oftentimes they can process spoken text much more quickly. So they can bump this up to fast and have this read at a pretty fast pace and process that more quickly than the average person could. So a lot of it could be tendencies, some of it could just be what students can handle.
And what's the quality of your French and Spanish voices, and do you have German?
Very good. The French and Spanish are fantastic. We've had them on our desktop products for a long time now. And the German voice, my understanding is that is coming. I had a couple other people at the Convergence conference ask me about that, Scott, about specifically German. Is that coming? And on our desktop products, we do have German voices. Yeah, so if you look here now, actually, you know, I have the German voice here. I'm not sure if that's actually available to all of our users yet, but if I've got it, that means if you don't have it yet, it's eventually coming. So
that's fantastic.
Yeah. So there you go.
Great. So I'll get and move on to the PDF sources now in the.
One more question.
Yep.
One more question for you. The digital voices, the digital text. What do you use for digital text when it comes to formatting?
What do we use for digital text when it comes to formatting?
Now, which format do you use?
I guess I'm not sure of the question. When you mean formatting,
I'm in the middle of a webinar. Sorry, we have a miscommunication going on over here. Yeah, in terms, like you mentioned the Harry Potter novel.
Yep.
And what digitized version did they have? Did they scan that and then use?
Oh yeah.
PDF?
So they my recollection is that they scanned it into, I think, a PDF document. So they had one of our UK voices on a PDF document, which, you know, is kind of, it's up to what legality you can have. If you have a student who has a documented print disability, you usually have the rights to be able to take content and digitize it that way for that student. So that was the case,
Yes,
I think, there.
absolutely.
Or I think that there was places
What
where
about,
they came across the text on web pages as well.
Hey Scott, have you thought about coming to Uli?
what about downloading like e-text? Does text help read those at all? Or
In
can
terms
they
of,
be converted?
well, it could be possibly converted. It really kind of, right now, for Read and Write for Google, what we can do is PDF files, CASI files, and then if you have an EPUB, you can also have that as well. Over time, we're going to have more capabilities to do some OCR scanning. We're planning on adding, not just to the web pages here, but also in Google Drive. If you come across a PDF that has not been OCR scanned and is accessible, that you'll be able to just click a button and have, basically, you could take a picture of it right there and it reads it instantly. So it really doesn't matter what the format is, but for right now, the three formats: EPUB, PDF, and CAS files.
Right, CAS as in CASI, like Kurzweil files?
Yeah, so if you look here, this is my Google Drive, and this is kind of the third element of the program. When you come across either PDFs, which in this case, here's my homophone worksheet. Well, when I go and look at a homophone worksheet, I basically, this is a PDF. It's an accessible PDF, so if I want, I can have this read aloud.
Complete the sentences by writing the correct homophone in each space.
And you have some of the same types of tools that you might have with a program like Kurzweil. For instance, if I wanted to actually answer the questions here or transcribe into here or type into it, I can put that here.
Paul Brown.
Now this is going to persist with this document for anybody else who is using Read and Write for Google. So if I've shared this document with a student and I'm a teacher, the student can just type the answers back here, and I can go back in and look at the shared document and see those answers here. Now I also here have the ability to, if I'm going through and I want to understand what a word is, I can look it up in the dictionary, I can use the picture dictionary, and then I can use those same types of tools. I can highlight and extract this to a new Google Doc if I'd like. So if you've got students that are using something like this, here is a PDF of a textbook. Well, if I want, I can use the tools there of highlighting. So maybe I'm going to highlight some of this blue. So this is fantastic. So you can do highlighting kind of like what you would do typically with a textbook. And then I can pull all these into a new document, which is in this case going to be a Google document. And then it's going to basically store that Google Doc the same way in Google Drive as I was doing from the web pages and from Google Docs. So this is particularly with the PDF, but these same capabilities, Scott, you can actually have if you have a CASI file. So I think you mentioned that there are some schools there that currently do use Kurzweil 3000. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Yeah, so if you've got a CASI file, let me see if I can find one here. That's a Word file. Thought I had one in here. But essentially you could...
.kes in the search. That should pull it up.
So here's one. This was a CAS file, so you can use this same suite of tools right here.
But Montague is bound as well as I, in penalty alike, and 'tis not hard.
So all you really have to do is just take those CAS files and get them into Google Drive. And then once they're in Google Drive and you use ours to open it up, it'll just read those automatically. So you have a lot of that flexibility right there inside of Google Drive to just open that type of document up, either a PDF or a KESI file. And then the third one would be, I'm not sure, have you come across any EPUBs or any students using the EPUB format, Scott?
Not yet, but it's coming.
Yeah, so for those types of documents, when you have those in Google Drive as well, you can open those up. And here, as you see, it's more of a, it looks more like a book reading format, which is exactly what EPUB is. So I've got the same tools basically here from those documents.
Increasing the number of public domain and licensed works that can be.
Now here you also have the ability to bookmark and to, if you'd like, change the different font options, the background color, that sort of thing. So very beneficial for students that have particular needs. So, and that is basically, that's a look at all three areas of the program. Any questions on any of those three, Scott?
No, I think you've answered a lot of them.
Should I go then now and just kind of talk a little bit about the licensing options?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. So essentially with Read and Write for Google, there's three different deployment options. One is you can have an individual student through the Chrome Web Store. You could just purchase a license for one student. If you look at St. Albert's, all the schools, and you want to have a group of students, so it could be a handful or a classroom of students from one school and classrooms from other schools, you can make one group in your Google domain and pull students into there. So manually you can just pull in the student Google IDs into this group, and anyone in that group then can use it, and that starts with a minimum of 150 students within St. Albert's domain. And then the third and final option is to do the entire domain. And what that means basically is we turn on Read and Write for Google, and every student, every teacher, anyone who is in the St. Albert's domain will have Read and Write for Google in their account. And so the cost for these basically, the single cost you're looking at $100 per student. It's an annual cost, and again that's through the Chrome Web Store. To do a group of students with a minimum of 150 amongst all the buildings is $10 per student, and again that is also an annual cost. And then if you wanted to do the entire school board, it's $1.50 per student, and you'd multiply that times however many students are in the district, and that's an annual cost, and then you turn it on and every student has access there. So any questions about the pricing or licensing models there, Scott? Is it pretty straightforward?
What is the SnapVerter add-on?
So the SnapVerter, good question. What SnapVerter is, it's actually something new. When you come across text, and let me just grab a different slide here just to kind of walk through this. Occasionally, in fact, I just talked with a school board today that is using Read and Write for Google, and occasionally, more as time goes on, the more students use Read and Write for Google, they will come across documents or text that cannot be read because it's not accessible. So it may be a PDF, but it may be an image PDF, so that you can't really grab the text there. So Read and Write for Google, nor any program, knows that there's any text there. And so that could be with a PDF, a JPEG. So when students come across those file types, they're not able to have Read and Write for Google read them. So what our solution is something that we call SnapVerter. This was launched last month, and essentially what SnapVerter does is it allows you to take a picture using either your phone, or you could just take a file and drag it into a folder system we have inside of your Google Drive. So Texthelp places a folder system for the teachers basically to access. If there's, let's say you have a PDF of a workbook and it's not accessible, or it hasn't been scanned accessibly, you can drop that PDF into this folder, and about 3 or 4 minutes later it's going to be in a new folder called Finished. What we do on our end is we look into your folder every 15 seconds or so, and any new documents that are in there, we take them, we scan them, and we place them into a different folder called Finished, so that you can essentially open it up there and then use our tools, the PDF reader, to read that document. So you have the two different ways to do it, either an inaccessible file that's either in Drive or on your desktop, pull it into this folder in Drive, or you could take a picture with your phone, and that can be uploaded directly into this folder, and then 5 minutes later open up your computer and you can find that picture that you took, whether that's a worksheet on your desk or it could be a recipe or whatever else it would be. You can open up Read and Write for Google about 5 minutes later and be able to read it that way. So that's where it's an additional upcharge of 30% of whatever that domain cost would be, and then any teacher has access to be able to make any of those inaccessible documents accessible.
And that SnapVerter add-on is 30% of $1.50. Is that what I'm getting?
Basically, yeah. So it would be, you just add on about 45 cents to what the $1.50 cost is per student.
Right.
And again, it's optional. You don't have to do it, but if you if students are occurring, or I should say are coming across inaccessible text, it is one way to deal with that. Another way would be, you know, just to have better awareness throughout the school board of using copiers or scanners that are set with OCR scanning as their preset. And sometimes that's possible, sometimes that's not.
Is this in U.S. funds?
No, this is Canadian.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, the only other thing is, you know, we do have a continuing roadmap here where right now the tools that you saw today are the tools we have today, but we are working on adding more elements to Read and Write for Google. A look at the evolution of the program itself. 2 years ago, it was just one toolbar that only worked inside of Google Docs. And then last year we built this into a much larger support tool for Google Docs. Then we developed it into the web browser and then the Google Drive, as we've seen. This year we've added a lot of different functionalities. The dictation piece is new, the word prediction is new. We added printing because a lot of people who formerly used Kurzweil and were using KES files, they wanted to have those printed out. And so we added that ability to our PDF reader to print directly once you add in your answers or transcribe in your answers there. And really our future, this is just kind of a handful of things we're going to be doing. In about 2 weeks' time, so the first part of December, we're going to have a French version, which I don't think is listed on here, but that's very new. We have a French version for word prediction and other elements of Read and Write for Google for students who speak French natively. So they'll be able to actually, you know, use the prediction when they're typing in French. They'll have it work that way. MP3 creator, so you can highlight text and then click a button and it'll create an MP3 or audio book file of it, essentially into your Google Drive. Phonetic spell check, voice notes, the ability for students just to click a button and say their answer to, let's say, a question, and then have that instantly inserted into a Google Doc. So if they don't want to have to necessarily type it out or speak it out for dictation, they can just have their voice recorded and automatically stuck in the doc. So a lot of different things we're adding here. Another one is similar to that SnapVerter. We are planning on having an OCR scanning tool on hopefully web pages and inside of PDF. So if you come across inaccessible text, you can click a button, it'll take a picture of your page right there, kind of do an instant scan and just start reading it instantly. And we've had that available on our desktop software for 8 years, and that has made such a difference to students that encounter different types of files, because then it doesn't matter what file type you're looking at, just take a picture of it or pull a box around and it'll read it. So Scott, any other questions relating to any of the features or the tools or the pricing or the licensing, or does that pretty well explain it?
No, that explains it. I take it if we go by a group, it must be the first 100, and then after that in packages of 50. Is that correct?
That's correct, yeah. So if you look at a group here, the minimum that you would do would be 150 up front. That would be, you know, $1,500. And then if you wanted to add more at any point, that would be in increments of 50, and we would prorate those to the end of the life of that initial 150 students or whatever that initial purchase would be. So if you purchase that now, you'd have 12 months for the 150 students. You know, a few months down the road, now you want to add 50. Well, then we'd multiply 50, but we'd prorate it to end at the same date as the initial 150 students. Does that make sense?
Right. Yep, it does.
Yep.
And these are annual costs.
Exactly. Yep. Yep.
Okay. Well, that's been very helpful. I sure appreciate your time on this, Paul.
Sure. Thanks very much. If you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, hopefully this is helpful for you.
It sure is, and I will